Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor. A couple of weeks ago, when I looked at a self-help book, I said that would probably be the only time that I would ever look at that kind of book. And when it comes to this week's video, I decided to change my mind. Ho ho. And and that is because I actually found one book that explores from this particular subtype of books, or genre of books if you prefer, that actually approaches that topic from a somewhat distinctive perspective. That book is Evolve Your Brain, The Science Behind Changing Your Mind by Joe Dispenza. Originally published in 2008, I will admit I am actually basing my review off the uh, second Romanian edition of this book, published in 2019 by the publishing house Curtea Veche, literally the Old Court, as part of their bibliotherapy collection, translated by Mihaela Vacariu and retitled Train Your Brain: Strategies and Techniques of Mental Transformation. Admittedly, it's not exactly identical to the first title or to the original title, but I would say that it does actually match the intentions of the author just a little bit better. As for the author himself, well, pretty much everything I could find out about him is falls into either marketing fluff or red flag. On the one hand, his works have been translated in a whole bunch of languages, and he visited a whole bunch of countries, holding like talks and conferences and stuff, including under the invitation of some very influential organizations, institutions, and associations. On the other hand, he's a chiropractor who claims expertise in quantum physics despite not actually having any formal training or education within the field of quantum physics. So yeah, that is not a particularly inspiring background, if I'm to be honest. But what does that say about the book's quality? Well, my impressions in summary are this book does actually deliver some interesting insights that, as far as I'm aware, are actually maybe not unique, but still still rare and still very noteworthy within the self-help genre. It still uses some very distinctive marketing language to package and sell the methods and approach of the author, but but beyond that is actually a somewhat interesting presentation of neurology, neural anatomy, and the as well as the functions uh, and analysis methods that are intrinsic to the human brain. So if you are able to look beyond the trappings of self-help books, or the typical trappings thereof, then you will quite likely find an at least somewhat decent treatise on the philosophy of mind, or a primer into neurology or neurobiology. Though admittedly, I'm pretty sure at least some of the information in this book has since aged out of being relevant, or has been proven untrue. But even then, I would argue it still has some merit, even if it is not the merit that the author himself would have initially hoped for it to have. And now that I'm done with my broad impressions, it's time I delved into some specifics. This book, as I've already said countless times so far, is a self-help book, but one that approaches this topic from a neurological perspective, in that it seeks to explore how exactly it is that the brain itself processes new information and new experiences. And by processing I mean like the full hog, like take in, like assimilates, like tries to digest, and how exactly the different parts of the brain try to react to a variety of new stimulations. How that reaction itself is then processed and classified, and how exactly it is evaluated from that point, moving forward, both in its initial impact and in the aftermath that it has. And in order to do so, the author actually delves into the brain from a biochemical and anatomical perspective, looking into looking into various parts of the brain, which part of the brain is responsible for which functions, and then exploring how it is that these various functions contribute, first of all, to the general functioning of the brain, second of all, to the specific functions that are that are relevant in terms of in terms of self-help, in terms of like self-digestion, self-reflection, and and exploring or piecing together new informations, new situations. It is for that reason quite quite dense as a material. Like there is like it is a little bit heftier than typical than the typical self-help book. However, the author, I will credit him for realizing that and for trying to make his book a little bit more understandable by trying to use a whole bunch of simpler parallels, similes, and examples in order to illustrate the points he makes. I do have to say that not all of these examples are actually effective as well, because there are some that I found tedious and not particularly illustrative, and therefore there are points where I wish he would have stuck a little bit more with the scientific aspect, because that is really the main gimmick of the book, and that is really something that that it does very well. That being said, I do have to argue that at least some of the quoted sources are titled in such a way that I don't really think that they really illustrate what the author intends to use them to illustrate. So yeah. Sometimes don't be a little bit, so try not to be too surprised when when the sources the author quotes somewhat disagree with him. And I have to say that is a little bit of a bad sign when the one thing that I've praised you for doing best is still something that you're not doing still not something you are doing greatly. That being said, that is not the biggest issue with the book. Instead, the biggest issues, plural actually, with the book come right at the beginning in the first chapter, and then right at the end in the epilogue. And I'm going to start by talking about the first chapter because that's where they are, introduced. And because in the first chapter, this author claims to support faith healing, or more broadly, the idea that if you that you can just will yourself to health, or if you and then the body will just heal, heal itself, make itself better, without any kind of external medical interference. And he holds that belief, and holds the belief in the effectiveness of that even against various forms of cancer. And the second point that the first chapter introduces is his concept that the human mind is actually a waveform function of the brain. Again, this is where his expertise in quantum physics comes in. Now, I have to say, I don't have any formal expertise when it comes to quantum physics either, even though I may be an engineer, but that is not my field. However, even I can tell that the brain is a little bit too complex a structure for quantum physics concepts to really apply to it. So that idea is really more fantasy than science, I would say. Thankfully, the book kind of doesn't touch on that until the very end, the epilogue, where he hints towards this, the mind, given that it is a waveform function, or given that he classifies it as a waveform function. He also considers that the existence of the mind is therefore therefore proof that the brain itself is connected to a broader, some could even call it divine intelligence, and that if you will yourself to to do something, or if you want to do something strongly enough, then the universe itself will bend around you in such a way as to make that happen. Now I have to say, this book actually cites some web links among its sources, and most of these links are dated to late 2006, which is when I will assume this book was written. And I have to say that for late 2006, this was an optimistically naive presentation. But now that we are almost 2 decades and 2 global recessions later, well, then I think it is fair to say that this is, that this is detached from reality, sad, or both. It just is. Sorry to say it. Overall, while I recognize that there are some interesting and distinctive aspects when it comes to this book, its ultimate framing and presentation don't really allow it to really showcase its its strengths or its distinctiveness to the highest extent possible. My final rating for Evolve Your Brain is a 3 out of 5. And that was my review. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed it, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the book itself or to my review of it, that is what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My books, the first of my own Heir to the Empire series, The Next Generation and the Path Not Taken, are available at various book retailers under their respective master links in the description down below, right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. And given I'm trying to get my third book released, I might just have some info on that, by the time this video comes out. So who knows? The time this video comes out might be as good a time as any to check those links out. I also have a second channel where you can hear me talking about whatever else crosses my mind. Typically, it'll be related to narrative analyses, but of works outside the print medium. So if that sounds like it could be of interest to you, then I suggest you go ahead and check it out. If, however, you want to hear more about my thoughts on the print medium and selected works therein, well then I suggest you stay on this channel and go through my extensive backlog, where aside from an embarrassment of riches when it comes to book reviews, I also do book rewriting videos, writing advice videos, as well as videos on miscellaneous writing topics. If none of what I've said is of interest to you, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it from me. So until next time, I am Jonathan Taylor, and this has been the Heir's Lair.